I'm Mike Huckman at the BioBuzz Center, and I'm pleased to welcome David Thomas, who is the Senior Director of Industry Research at the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, and one of the two authors of this annual report on the state of the life sciences investment community. David, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, as is the case typically when you put out this annual report, there's some good news and there's some bad news. So why don't we start and get the bad news out of the way first?
Sure. I think the bad news is that 2016 was a tough year, and a lot of the dollars that we measure in investment and in licensing transactions actually dropped quite a bit. So, for example, the IPOs out there, we raised 50% less in 2016 than in 2015.
Wow.
Follow-on offerings down 50%. And when we look at licensing, we see a 50% drop in the upfront money that came into these small biotechs.
Why?
Well, I think overall,
that's a big drop.
It starts with the capital markets. So there was somewhat of an exodus out of the R&D stage companies in 2016. A lot of it because of the political rhetoric that picked up during the presidential campaign in the US. And there was a risk-off mentality. And that trickles down to follow-on offerings and IPOs, which companies now are more so than in the past in need of raising capital in the public markets, because since 2012, in fact, we've had 200 new biotech IPOs. So a lot of these small biotechs are on the public market, and if they want to run a new clinical trial, phase 2, phase 3, that's where they're going to get their money. And they weren't able to do that as much in 2016.
So that's the bad news.
Yes.
What's the silver lining?
The silver lining is that we've seen a shift and an excitement towards preclinical stage companies. Now we see this on the venture capital side, and we see it on the licensing side. So for licensing, for example, last year was a record number of multi-billion-dollar biobuck deals. We say biobucks because those are potential dollars that companies might receive. And these were all preclinical. We saw 15 of those last year. In our records, going back to the year 2000, the highest number was 4 of these biobuck deals for preclinical assets.
What's driving that? Because it's somewhat counterintuitive to what we've seen historically, where most investors are looking for more of a sure thing that's in later stages of development, where the odds are significantly higher that therapy, for example, is going to get approved and then made available to patients. Why are they looking at these much, much earlier stage companies?
I think it has a lot to do with what we're seeing at the earliest stages in terms of new modalities. So now we're seeing new gene therapy approaches that are out there. We're seeing CRISPR genome editing tools that weren't around really 5 years ago. New ways to design small molecules and even peptides and novel antibodies, different types of structures of antibodies. So these are new ways to go about creating new drugs and new approaches to intractable diseases.
So a lot of early, promising, exciting science going on.
Yes, yeah. So that is driving the interest on the licensing side for the large pharmaceutical companies, but also on the venture side. So the venture capitalists are also putting money in to the preclinical, and we saw a record number of Series A investments, that early stage.
That first round of financing.
The large first round of financing was a record last year, and the later stage rounds were actually down, but early stage is better than ever.
So David, that's a look back at, or a snapshot of last year. Here we are pretty much at the midway point of 2017.
Yep.
What's the burgeoning trend that you're seeing on your radar screen so far this year?
So we've seen a shift, and we're seeing a very positive shift. So the follow-on offerings I mentioned, they're up 106% this time, at this time this year versus last year, which is very positive. And we've seen a couple of IPOs go out for way above their asking price in their S1 filings. So there is a trend on the upside here coming out of 2016.
Great. And if people want to dig into this report, where can they get access to an electronic one?
Yes, it's on our website at bio.org. We have a URL, bio.org/IA reports.
Great. This year's theme at the convention is the word breakthrough. So David, breakthrough to what?
It's a breakthrough to new modalities, new approaches to going after targets that were not druggable in the past.
That were not treatable with a therapy, in other words.
That's right. So new therapies going against diseases that we have not been able to tackle in the past.
That's David Thomas, the Senior Director of Industry Research at the Biotechnology Innovation Organization here at the BioBuzz Center.